Today's learning target is I'll be able to interpret conditional relative frequencies in order to determine and justify if variables are associated. We are going to take a look at this example over here and try to answer the following 3 questions and eventually get through how 2 categorical data that we are seeing are associated or not. So the first question, it says, suppose a student is selected at random from those who completed the survey. What do you think was his or her response to the selection of a favorite superpower? Explain your answers. So if you take a look at right over here, there are 2 graphs which represent the same thing. One is just the frequency table. It just showed how many people surveyed, and which gender picked what type of superpower that they wanted, and so forth. And the bottom one is the relative frequency, and it is especially based on their gender because all the gender has a 1 as a total. So that means it was created given each gender was already known. So, and if you add all these numbers here, it will get to 1. Same thing for over here. So just know that this was not created based on joint relative frequency or marginal relative frequency. This is the conditional relative frequency. All right, so suppose that a student is selected at random from those who completed the survey. What do you think was his or her response to the selection of a favorite superpower? Explain your answer. So to answer this question, I'll probably try to pick the highest number that I can find out from the table here, and I will go to my frequency table in the first one on the top, and I will look for probably highest number. And the highest number that I'm seeing is over here, 71. So that should be my answer. I think it probably, if I bet that it will be a male and the freeze time, it will be probably best bet for me to for this question here. So I'll set male and freeze time. Number 2, suppose that a student is selected at random from those who completed the survey. If the selected student is female, what do you think was her response to the selection of a favorite superpower? Explain your answer. So now we have a condition happening here, which is the fact that the selected student is female. And so we are not going to worry anything about the male students. So I'm going to only focus on the female students here. Or you could even use this one as well. Really doesn't matter. All right. So if I know the student is female, which would be the best bet for me to tell, oh, I think this girl would pick her favorite superpower. It should be the highest number that I want to look for. And among them, what I'm seeing is the highest number is the telepathy. And it also has the highest conditional relative frequency based on the gender. We can say telepathy, and because it has highest frequency and conditional relative frequency on given gender. Next question, suppose a student is selected at random from students who completed the survey. If you had to predict which superpower the student selected, would it be helpful to know the student's gender? Explain your answer. All right, so for the previous example, if we know the student is female, we said we'll pick that student probably is the telepathy just because it has the highest frequency and the conditional relative frequency. So I think if I get to know it, it will be easier for me to guess what would be the best bet because it sort of eliminates the unknown possibilities and also able to focus on which would be the best bet. And if I know the student's gender was male, I probably went to the freeze time just because that is the highest conditional relative frequency based on the gender. So yes, because each gender has the different highest favorite superpower. So from here, what we can see is that the female students tend to choose telepathy as their favorite superpower, and male students tend to think the freezing time will be their favorite superpower. That means the gender and the favorite superpower has some sort of association, some sort of the relationship that we can explain over here. As I just mentioned, if we know the gender of the student, it's easier for me to predict something else, like what would be the favorite superpower, and vice versa too. When this can happen, we are saying that two categorical variables are associated, or you could use the word related as well, but the proper word to be used is use the word association. And if row or column conditional relatives are different for the rows and the columns of the table, what does it mean by that? So if you take a look at here, for the female, we were able to go straight to the highest superpower is the telepathy. For male, we were able to go to freeze time. Both gender does not lead to the go to one specific superpower that both of the genders are going towards to. If males were also males' favorite superpowers were also the telepathy, then we're saying, oh, there's nothing much going on. They are not associated, but they are not related. We cannot predict using this information. But for this case, we can do that. We can predict, we can see some sort of relationship happening based on the gender and their favorite superpower. So that's something that we are going to try to see. And the strength of association, so if you see the big differences between the number, we are saying strong association. Smaller differences, we are saying weak or nearly no association. We are only going to say no association if there's no difference at all. Association does not mean they are cause and effect relationship. It doesn't tell you that if you are female, you must like the telepathy. There are bunch of other female students liking the other parts of it, and so we cannot say it's like definite cause and effect, but we can just generally say there is an association, is that we can see some pattern, we can use this information to predict, but we are not going to say it's going to be definite cause and effect. Let's take a look at over here. A survey was conducted with 100 people. As part of this survey, people were asked whether or not they supported banning mobile phones in cinemas. The results are summarized in the table, and there are also written on the segmented bar graph over here. Is there an association between support for banning mobile phones in cinemas and gender of the respondent? Explain why. Take a look at this relative frequencies here. If you take a look at it, more males said yes than the female here, and less males said no than the female. So things are going on is that males tend to say yes on banning mobile phones. Less females said yes to the banning mobile phones. We can say there is an association, there is some sort of relationship, and knowing gender helps us to what would be their most likely response. Yes, there is an association between the gender and the support for banning mobile phone in cinema. All right. And if you take a look at this segmented bar graph over here, we see here that there's a more male said yes to the banning mobile phones, and less females said no to it. So if we get to know the gender is, if you are male, you're more likely to say yes. If you're female, you're less likely to say yes. So that's something that's contributing to this association here. And let's talk about something completely different case over here. The same survey, people were asked whether or not they supported the Sunday racing. The results are summarized in the table. Is there an association between the support for Sunday racing and the gender of the respondent, and explain why? So if you take a look at here, the percentage between the male and females are pretty much the same. The males supported about 55%. Female also supported Sunday racing about 55%. Same thing for the against here. Their percentages are pretty much similar. They're getting closer here. So, and if you notice in the segmented bar graph, the male percentage looks pretty similar, even though there's some differences, pretty similar percentage here. And same thing for the who said no. Gender does not affect what's going on here, and whether they are supporting the Sunday racing or not. It's just a general thing. We cannot use like one of the categories to predict what would be the possible responses here, because their responses came out to be pretty much the same. So this case is something that we call no. There is nearly no association because, and I'll say between the gender and the support for the Sunday racing, because the conditional relative frequencies on gender are close to each other. If you see the sort of the bigger differences between the conditional relative frequencies, and we are saying there is an association because it's easier for us to describe what's going on. More males will be doing this, less females will be doing that. But we are saying nearly no association or less association if the relative frequencies are closer together. If they're literally the same, we are going to say it's going to be no association certainly. But I added that word nearly because they are very closer but not the same. So this would be your first question to try. This would be the second question that I want you to try. This is the final question that I want you to try.